Speaker, as the honourable opposition knows, there's a war raging that's affecting prices everywhere. In this chaos, Canada's in a strong position.
So the February job numbers just came out, and it's devastating for Canada. We'll go into details in just a second, so stay with me. But according to Liberal MP Evan Solomon right here, blaming the war in Iran is the way to justify these devastating numbers. Liberals will blame anything but themselves for all their failures. I kind of admire the level of shamelessness that the Liberals exhibit when it comes to blaming everyone and everything for their sheer incompetency, and there is a lot of incompetency to go through. So regarding Evan Solomon's statement, find the issue here. Let's see. He's blaming the February job numbers on a war that started in March. Yeah, that's right. They really take you for an idiot. I really can't believe this. It's insane. My name is Elliot Daniel, and this is the Right Call Report. Like, share, subscribe. Every interaction on this channel helps get the truth out, and perhaps one day break the CBC-induced coma that Canadians are under. And if you're tired of that same old government and media BS and finally want some common sense commentary, well, smash that subscribe button because you found the right place. So we're going to be looking at this devastating report that just came out when it comes to Canadian job numbers. It ain't looking good. Canada's suffering. Then a Conservative MP tabled the bill which would bring castle law into Canada. What does it mean? Is it good? Isn't it bad? And let's be honest, will it even pass? And finally, an inconvenient fact was uncovered by the Conservative regarding sweetheart loans that were given to friends of the Liberal Party. What else is new? So stick around because you don't want to miss the truth behind all of this.
Mr. Speaker, well, it's no surprise that Canadians are challenged with buying homes right now when there's a war in the Middle East. There's no surprise, Mr. Speaker.
I had to show you guys this one because now blaming Iran for everything has become the new default modus operandi of the Liberal Party. See, it used to be that they blamed Harper. Then it became the pandemic. Then it was the war in Ukraine. Eventually, it was Trump and the bad tariffs. Well, today, the new scapegoat of the Liberal is the war in Iran. Mind you, the insanity, they're blaming the war in Iran for the housing crisis, which has been around now for the better part of a decade, and which is completely self-inflicted. See, if we wanted to solve the housing crisis, we could do it like this. It requires three things. 1, cut immigration. See, if you lower demand, you've just solved half of the problem, and immigration is the #1 factor for housing demand. 2, cut taxes. See, most people don't realize, but 30% plus of the home price or the cost of building a home is development charges. That is all level of taxes, permits, approval, at all three stratas of government, environmental impact assessment, you name it. So if you cut down on these taxes, you now create an incentive for builders to build homes and make a profit. And yes, guys, we're not scared of profits. It is a capitalist country. If builders make money, they'll build more houses. And it's fine because we've cut demand. So now, with an increase in supply, inadvertently, it will bring down housing costs. But if we don't create a buffer for profit, builders won't build. So we got to keep this in mind. We can cut the prices of building a house by 30% overnight. And 3, unshackle the rental market. Everywhere that a government gets involved in setting rental prices, it completely skyrockets the rental. You think rent control is good at face value, but what you're doing is you're meddling in the supply and demand in the free market economy. Why is it that Alberta has cheaper rent prices than, say, Ontario or BC? See, these provinces have rent control, heck, even in Quebec. But if you allow landlords to make and set prices on the rental units, well, 1, they stand to make profits and money, and they will invest into more rental housing. Or, keep this in mind, if they inflate the price way too high, they'll have a hard time renting it out. And this free market economy will drive prices down. But anyways, Canada lost 84,000 jobs. That was the whole point of this segment. 84,000 jobs. It is devastating. And the tagline of this article sums it up perfectly. Simply brutal. Canada lost 84,000 jobs in February, and unemployment rises to 6.7%. It is a grim report, and it should make the Bank of Canada rate hikes unlikely, according to BMO chief economist. So what are the details of this? Well, Canada's labor market lost a net 83,900 jobs in February, driven by a substantial decline in full-time positions. Guys, full-time jobs are the heart of the economic viability of Canada, and we've just lost 84,000 of them. Now, this makes me laugh because they always forecast amazing things. The government gaslights us all the time. These results were far below the slight job gain forecast by economists. Wait, economists were wrong? I thought we elected a banker economist because he'd always be right. Shit. Oops. Now, this is where it gets really bad. The share of the population aged 15 and older who are working fell 0.2 percentage points to 60.6%, marking a second consecutive monthly decline and leaving it just above a recent low reached last summer. Let's read more about how bad this is. And the BMO chief economist is not holding back punches. He says, he calls the February labor force survey data a simply brutal result, noting that it ranks as one of the worst non-pandemic month ever for jobs. He declares the report weak, almost from head to toe, and points to a near absence of net job growth in the last 12 months. And in the meantime, in the House of Commons, the Liberals keep claiming that our economy is strong, resilient, they're building a foundation for it. Well, the numbers don't support that, buddy. And keep in mind now, our unemployment rate is 6.7%. Let's put this in perspective, shall we? This is the unemployment rate for our southern neighbor, America. And right now, it stands at 4.4%. Contrast that to our 6.7%. They're doing 30 and change percent better than we are. But let's zoom out a little bit further. Look at the past 3 years. It has never climbed above 4.5%, ever. Like, they're eating our lunch. They're full out like the guy at the cafeteria that comes to your table and says, "This is my lunch now, buddy." They're doing so much better than us. But I can rain on your parade even more with this by telling you that this is the worst single month decline in job loss since April 2020. Now, remind me again, what happened in April 2020? Oh, right, the pandemic. Are we in a pandemic right now? I mean, unless you consider the last decade as some form of parasitic, liberal, hive mind pandemic of sorts. So according to StatScan, there's only been 4 months with worse numbers than we have right now in modern Canadian history. June 1982, January 2009, March 2020, and April 2020. Now keep in mind that 3 out of those 4 months happened during the professional life of millennials. Millennials are getting squeezed like there's no tomorrow. I'm willing to even say the millennials have it worse than pretty much any generation in modern history. And when I say modern history, I mean the last 100, maybe even 200 years. Now consider this. You're coming out of university and it's the late 2000s, 08, 09, you're looking for a job. Boom, global financial crisis. Then you finally recover, although your salary is lower than what it should have been for a starting position, but it's all good. You're finally starting to put a bit of money aside and progressing. You're entering the middle management era of your life, and then you get hit March 2020. Bam. But it's okay. Ça va bien aller, like we said in Quebec, right? It's gonna be fine. So you're now coming out of the pandemic, and now the Liberal government just completely obliterates your economy, and you lose your job once again. Man, I don't want to laugh at this. It's pitiful. Now, for today's retarded Liberal take, we're going to go see Marc Lévesque, former chief economist at the Public Sector Pension Investment Board, and former chief economist strategist at TD Securities. Remind me not to deal with TD because this is horrible. So Marc was replying to Melissa Lantsman, a high-ranking conservative MP, who said that Canada lost 83,900 jobs in 1 month, economists expecting gains. You know, she's harping on the government, and rightfully so. Marc Lévesque said, "Oh, come on, Trump has unleashed economic turmoil across the world and you blame our government. You think this is our fault? Tired of politicians either taking credit for job gains or blaming their opponents for job losses." May I remind you that Marc calls himself politically nonpartisan, by the way. This is my take for Marc. Yes, it is our fault, Marc. And yes, it is Canada's government's fault. The government's job is to build the economy that is strong and resilient. It failed to do so. It failed to negotiate a trade deal. It failed to develop and exploit our resources. It failed to build energy infrastructure. It failed to invest in our economy, choosing to help foreign nations instead. If your economy collapses because of another country, were you ever truly sovereign to begin with? That's my question. Now, speaking of sovereignty, personal sovereignty is a very important thing. At least it's very close to my heart. And a Conservative MP just introduced a private member's bill in the House of Commons for a Canadian version of castle doctrine. I was going to say stand your ground law. We'll talk about that too, but no, castle law. So today, Sandra Kobina, a Conservative member of Parliament for Newmarket Aurora, introduced Bill C-270, the Stand on Guard Act. What a great name. What a great name. With violent crime up 55%, gun crimes by 130%, and extortion by 330% since 2015. Jesus Christ. I knew it was bad, but not that bad. Wow. What changed since then, by the way? I'll let you take a guess. I won't say it. Immigration. Anyways, so this timely legislation will clarify the legal standards around self-defense during a break-in. Too many Canadians have gone through long and costly trials just for defending themselves and their family. Yada, yada, yada. And she's definitely right. We're going to look at a few examples of how protecting your own dwelling nearly cost you your life. But first, let's explain what is castle doctrine. Because the media, you can't trust them with this. They will completely fearmonger you. You'd be surprised to hear that most Canadians don't even know that they have very little right to defend their own property. You know, you speak to your friends and most of them are going to tell you, yeah, if someone breaks in, I'm going to defend my freaking home. Well, you don't really have the right now. So castle doctrine is a legal principle that allows people to use reasonable force, including deadly force, to defend themselves inside their homes, or sometimes their workplace or vehicle. That's more in the US. That's not applicable to us in Canada right now. Without the duty to retreat. What it does is that it creates the concept that your home is considered your castle. You don't have to flee if someone unlawfully enters your home. Well, isn't that what we already have in Canada? Not at all. This is the Criminal Code of Canada when it comes to self-defense. A person is not guilty of an offense if A, they believe on reasonable grounds that force is being used against them or on another person and that a threat of force is being made against them or another person. B, the act that constitutes the offense is committed for the purpose of defending or protecting themselves or the other person from the use or threat of force. And C, the act committed is reasonable in the circumstances. Now see, that is the little prickly pear in the entire thing. The act is reasonable. It means that if someone breaks into your home and is intended on committing violence against you, it's not presumed that it's reasonable right off the bat. Rather, you have to prove that it was reasonable. On top of that, though, the government put 9 variables that a judge has to consider when he's looking at your self-defense case. Because yes, you will be arrested and you will be tried. But what are these 9 variables? Like, does it make sense? Well, 1, nature of the threat. What kind of force or threat was involved? 2, imminence of the threat. Was the danger immediate? Was there any other available options to avoid it? So yes, that's right. You're in your home, someone breaks in and wants to hurt you, but you might have to just run away instead. 3, the person's role in the incident. Did the accused provoke or escalate the conflict? Wow. So someone breaks into your home and you challenge the intruder. Would that be considered escalating the conflict? Guys, what kind of cucked nation is this? 4, whether a weapon was used or threatened. Did either side have a weapon? Yeah. Okay. 5, physical characteristic of the parties. Size, age, gender, physical capabilities. 6, relationship history. Any prior relationship between the parties. Previous threats of violence. 7, prior interactions or communications. What happened leading up to the confrontation. 8, proportionality of the response. Was the defensive force proportionate to the threat? And 9, whether the threat was lawful. Was the force being used against the accused legally authorized? For example, police action. Now, let's paint a little portrait here, right? Let's say you're sleeping soundly in your bed. It's the middle of the night. You're cozy and dreaming about Nutella, and you hear a kerfuffle downstairs, windows breaking. What do? Well, according to the Crown and the Government of Canada, first, you should get up and don't grab any weapon. No baseball bat, no knife, definitely no firearms. And go downstairs to assess the risk. When you find this intruder in your home, first you have to ascertain, do you have a relationship with them? Do you know them or you don't? Two, you have to look at them. How tall are they? Is it a man, a woman? Are they old, frail? Are they young, buff? What are their physical capability? You got to ask them, have you gone to the gym recently? How much can you lift? How much can you squat, bro? Hey, would you mind telling me if you're carrying a weapon? It could be a knife, a taser, a baseball bat, maybe a box cutter. You tell me, do you have a weapon on you right now? And then make sure you ask them very calmly, do you intend on applying imminent force onto me? I just need to know. See, this is the kind of response judges in courtrooms, all cozy, protected by special constables or sheriff, think that normal, regular people in the middle of the night consider. No effing way, guys. If someone breaks into your home, they are the criminal already. They have broken the law. They have shown their character. Every action they're on in should be considered a threat from the get-go. You're in my dwelling. I don't think you're there to have tea and to play checkers with me now, do you? Why do we keep protecting criminals who break the law? Here are 3 examples of times when people, good, honest Canadians, have defended their dwelling and it ended up ruining their lives. So we got Jeremy McDonald, don't mind Dougie right here. It's an article about it. From Lindsay, Ontario in 2025. The intruder, allegedly armed with a crossbow, broke into his apartment at 3:20 a.m. McDonald woke up and fought the intruder. The intruder suffered life-threatening injuries. Good. Police charged the homeowner with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon, despite the intruder also facing charges. What? Then you got right here, Ian Thompson. Good man, Ian Thompson. I followed this case very personally, very closely. From Port Colborne, Ontario in 2010. The incident, 3 masked men threw Molotov cocktails at his home. And this, by the way, after they had threatened him numerous times before. Thompson woke up in the middle of the night, retrieved a firearm from his safe. And mind you, Ian Thompson was a licensed firearm owner, for number 1. And he was also a firearms instructor. He's the guy you go to when you want to go get your possession and acquisition license. So he retrieved a firearm, walked outside while his house was inflamed, and shot warning shots in the air to scare the intruders, and they ran away. He then proceeded to take a garden hose and try to extinguish the flames. Police took over 45 minutes to arrive at his dwelling, may I add, and then they arrested him. He was charged with careless use of a firearm, pointing a firearm, and unsafe storage of a firearm and ammunition. He had to fight the government in court for years. It cost him his entire life saving, and luckily, lo and behold, he was acquitted. But you understand that that ruined his life nonetheless? See, the intruders, there were 2 neighbors that had a dispute with him over a fence, may I add, had been trying to do exactly that, ruin his life. Well, they succeeded. Not through their actions, clearly. They failed miserably at that. But through getting the government involved, and the government punished a law-abiding citizen who was guilty of nothing more than trying to protect his life and his dwelling. A Molotov cocktail could have killed him. Had he not woken up in the middle of the night, he would have burned to death. And by the way, when you have these people on your property trying to hurt you, you don't know what their intentions are. You don't know if it's just going to stop with a Molotov cocktail or if they're going to take out a weapon and fire at you. You don't know any of this. What he did was actually showing a lot of restraint, like warning shots. He didn't even shoot at them. And to that, I give kudos to the man, but also shame on the government. We have Cameron Gardiner from Collingwood, Ontario. 3 masked men kicked in the back door of his townhouse in the middle of the night. Gardiner and his girlfriend were then zip-tied and held at gunpoint during a home invasion. Gardiner eventually obtained the gun during the struggle and shot 2 intruders. Wow, that is impressive. He was then charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder, which were later reduced to manslaughter, before eventually being dropped. They were dropped in 2021. This happened in 2019. For 2 years, this man faced second-degree murder charges because 3 guys came in, assaulted him, zip-tied him, and then they lost their own firearm in an act of absolute bravery from this man to try to protect his life and that of his girlfriend, and he shot them. And he was charged with second-degree murder. Now let's compare and contrast this to our southern neighbors.
1,500, and I want to say, as to the person, we don't know which homeowner shot at him. I guess they think that they did something wrong, which they did not. If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. So whoever that was, you're not in trouble. Come see us. We have a gun safety class we put on every other Saturday, and if you take that, you'll shoot a lot better, and hopefully you'll save the taxpayers money. So with that, questions?
God, you gotta love Americans. But isn't that just common sense? Isn't that common sense? Why do we protect criminals in Canada? Why do we loathe the people who do the right thing in this country? You protect your dwelling, we hate you. You work hard and build a business, we will tax it to death. You stay in school and get a good job and invest, we will tax you to death, and then we'll take your freaking capital gains and tax it some more. Why do we punish good people in this country? We don't promote excellence, we promote mediocrity. But I'd push it even further. If it was only for me, I would go further in castle law. I would create a stand your ground law in Canada as well. Because castle doctrine is good for your dwelling. But in the US and some states, they push it further and extend it to any places that you are lawfully present in. Doesn't matter where, in public, as long as you're lawfully there, you're allowed to protect yourself. Effectively, it creates a framework where you don't have the duty to retreat. If someone is threatening or is applying force to you, you don't have to run away. You can stand your ground and utilize any force reasonable. So in short, what the Conservative MP is trying to do here is change the criminal code so that force is presumed to be justified if used against an illegal intruder. So by default, if you use force on an illegal intruder, it is considered fine. You don't have to go and spend years of your life in court proving that the force you used was reasonable and needed.
The Liberals handed out a $200 million below market value loan to a company to build a wind farm in Nova Scotia. It turns out that the chair of the company is the former leader of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, and 3 of the directors are close family members of former Liberal MPs. So given that,
Shocking.
Are we to believe that it is just a coincidence that this cabal of Liberal insiders received this $200 million sweetheart loan?
Here, here.
Well, are we surprised with another scandal coming out of the Liberal Party? It seems time and time again that the government really truly dictates who wins and who loses in this country. Which makes you ask the question, why should business innovate? Why should they thrive to improve their services or their product? Why should they invest into future-proofing or innovation? Why should they care about you as a client when all they need to do is make sure they lobby and cozy up to the right people in government and they will be taken care of? You know, back in the days when I was running a tech company in Montreal, we figured out very quickly that, and this sounds absolutely insane, it was at times more lucrative and profitable to invest our time into getting new government grants and subsidies or applying for government programs instead of doing typical business development. And then we realized, and then we joked about how the only way to survive as a company in this freaking country is to be friends with the government. But it seems to be true time and time and time again. From Brookfield globe-trotting to every place the prime minister is going and shaking the same hands that were just recently shaked, to now liberal insiders getting sweetheart loans. What does he mean by that, by the way? It's below market rate loans. Effectively, if they would have gone to the private sector, they would have had to pay a higher level of interest. But the government decided to provide these insiders, these former members of the Liberal Party or friends of the Liberal Party, with incredibly favorable loans that they could have never gotten from the private sector. So who are these liberal elite insiders that received that amazing $200 million loan? Well, so we have an individual that used to be an MLA for the Liberal Party and also the interim leader of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party. Then we have another individual who is the brother of the Liberal MP for Saxville, Preston, Chistcook. Then we have another man who is brother to Scott Brisson, who is a longtime friend and political advisor to Mark Carney, as well as the former Liberal MP for Kings Hants and a cabinet minister. And finally, we have the son-in-law of David Dingwall, who served as a Liberal MP for Cape Breton and also held a federal cabinet position. You know, for a party that calls itself the Party of the People, and for a bunch of electors who vote Liberals because they keep saying the Conservatives are the big corporatists, they support and they promote big businesses. Well, no. The Liberals is the party of the oligopoly. It's the party of the big insider lobbyists and big businesses. And effectively, it's the party of corruption and scandals at this point. That is effectively the Canadian scam. Work hard, do the right thing, get taxed to death, and your tax money goes to the elites. But don't worry. they'll make sure to tell you that it's to better the country, as they also send money to foreign countries and charities and slush funds that just so happen to come back in their pockets. Hello, we charity? And this is exactly why I do these reports, to try to shed a bit of light on what the CBC, as usual, won't show you guys. Which, again, raises more questions than it answers. Why do they not raise these questions? That's the role of journalists, but that shall be answered and looked into another day. Once again, my name is Elliot Daniel, and if you enjoyed this report, subscribe, like, and most importantly, comment down below. Is there any scandals that the Liberals have been caught doing that I should cover? I would love to look into it. Thank you very much.